The first step in accessing these components is going to be to remove this air snorkel. This part right here actually is just clipped in and pops off just by wiggling it out. This is held on by some Torxes, some T30s. So you do need to remove these. Might need a ratchet for that one. It doesn't want to come free. It's a total of 4. Just need to get that one. Okay, this lifts off. Next step is remove this back part, which is going to give us a little bit more access. You also have 4 more T30s that you can access once that front piece is removed. Just take note that these are some different threads. This is a coarse thread, when the other ones are a fine thread. Now this back piece just slides out towards the back, and easy as that. Put that aside. I'm going to be putting together more than one video using some of the same footage. So for clarity for the oil filter housing, gasket, and also this is also going to be part of removal for doing removal of a valve cover for an eccentric shaft sensor and a complete valve cover replacement. You need to take this cross member off up here. So I'm going to go ahead with that and show you how to do that. There's these 2 plastic rivets. I like to just use some side cutters and slide the holder, that rivet part out. This is the other side. If you just catch it and use that to pry that out. I have an extra end. And that's going to free up the harness. So that you can just lift this up and take this cross member off, which you have 2 13 millimeters on each side. So if you loosen it up, you do have the battery terminal jump location over here. So if you loosen them up, and then you can take them out with your fingers on this side. Because your space is limited, you can take this off if you have to. Just go ahead and take these off and then do the same thing on the other side. Okay, 2 for that side. Once they're loose, they come out pretty easy. This is to get that vanity cover off. Take that bar out of the way. Next I'm going to remove the vanity cover bolts. It's a 5mm Allen, and you should have 4 of these hold downs. 2 in the front, and you have 1 right back here, up top. And 1 back here. So you can see that a little better. There's one over here in this little shadow, and then there's one right here in this corner here. And that's going to allow you to go ahead and lift up this cover and slide it right off. Now that's a crucial step for doing the valve cover replacement or any kind of work for replacing spark plugs, etc. It also helps to open up this area here so we can see a little bit better. Now with the vanity cover removed, I'm going to start with cleaning up the eccentric shaft sensor plug. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect that right there. Let's come in a little bit closer. And pretty easy. I'm not really concerned with the oil in there because I'm going to be replacing it. But I want to make sure that the contacts inside the electrical connector are going to be clean. So I just picked up some electric parts cleaner that you can pick up in any automotive store. And you just want to spray down these contacts. Make sure everything was turned off. You can spray the connector down. I want to remove that oil. And then this should be fast drying. So that's going to clean up any oil that's inside those pins. If you do have some compressed air, you can blow some compressed air in there as well. But this should dry while I'm working on the rest of the job, which is going to be removing the valve cover and putting some spark plugs in and replacing the valve cover. That's quite a bit of oil in there. Okay, now that that's clean. Now if you have a 3 Series E90, over here on the left hand side you're going to have your engine computer inside of what's called an E-box. You do need to open up that E-box and disconnect your engine computer because you need to move that wiring up out of the way so you have access here. Also in the far back you have the covers that need to come off. And there's also another piece of plastic in the far back that you should remove in the center. That's going to give you a little bit more room to remove this valve cover. Now the engine setup's basically the same. It's just going to be a little bit tighter on a 3 Series or a 5 Series. What's nice about the E83 X3 is that there's more space to actually do some of this work. But I'm going to go ahead and remove this back piece so it opens it up even more. The microfilter housing just has these little twisters on it right here. You just have to twist these 3, which lifts up this cover to remove the microfilter. Now behind here you're going to have some Torxes. This is just like an E46. So if I remove these 4, I should be able to take this entire housing out. So I've loosened up those T30s. And I should be able to remove this back piece here as a complete unit. Just have to work each side. Kind of comes up and out. You can see the hold downs, which are just these right along here, and that really does open it up. So we have a lot better access to the back of the valve cover. The next step I'm going to do is remove the coils. They do have this lift clip right here, and a lot of times this can be difficult to unlock. So if you take a small screwdriver and you go in the very corner and just give it a little bit of a lift, a lot of times you can actually pop these free. Now there's another trick to removing these. A lot of times trying to yank these out, they're really stuck in there. So if you take a screwdriver again, go through the hole and give it a tug straight up, you can usually pop them free. And this is the coil right here. Comes out as a complete unit. So same thing. Now if you're chasing a misfire, you can swap coils. Right, pop that, lift that up to unlock. It's slide out the connector like this. You can't put these in wrong, they are keyed. Go like this again, and pop that up. You always want to inspect them, make sure there isn't any oil on the bottom of the boots making it swell, which would mean that it needs to be replaced. So do these front three, as you can see very clearly on how to remove them, and then do the back three myself. This would also be how you'd access the spark plugs. I've done the same thing for these back coils. So I'll take those three out. Next I'm going to work on removing this harness here. And I'm going to start with the Valvetronic motor. You can see that tab right there, there's one on each side. Just press them back on each side and pull that right away. And now I'm going to work on removing the harness for the ignition coils, which runs along that bottom right over here. Now you have to remove these grounds here. Here's an 8mm, and then further back past the Valvetronic is another one back here. So you have these two grounds, and they kind of sit on top of a hold down for the middle of the valve cover itself. This is an important ground. You can have some odd faults, bit serial data faults, and potentially damage your engine computer if these are not secured properly. So you definitely want to make sure that you check those and that all your grounds are attached before starting the vehicle. So very simple, just have to remove that 8mm nut. It's not very tight at all, so just start it with your ratchet and then take it off with your fingers so you don't drop it. Put that aside. This actually lifts right off. Do the same thing with the back one. Just lift that ground up out of the way. Now on the back side of the harness, once again, you have this crossover line right here, and right down here you have a little piece of plastic that's part of the valve cover. You just have to get in here and pry that back to free up each side. They're just held on by a little pressure fit on each side. So you're just going to pry out each side gently, and that's going to come free, and this is going to be able to start lifting up the harness. Now over here you have these little clips where you just push them back and it releases the harness. So you work your way around the harness, and you have them on the bottom too, and just lift up, and once you have all the hold downs, this harness is going to come free. Once you have all those hold downs loose, you're just going to lift it straight up, and that basically gives you some more room to get this valve cover out. The tightest point is now this battery cable, which is fed from this side going in, and this goes down and feeds the starter. So this is live here unless you've disconnected the battery. Just want to make sure you don't ground out anywhere. Loosen this up and take this nut off on top here. This is just a little backup charger setup. I can take this off, and this is not going to have power to it, as you can see, otherwise I'd be getting some sparks right there. And there's also a little 10mm right here. Take that one off as well. And just remove that. There's a little slot there. Alright, so both of those are not live, they're fed from here. close that up so that you can't ground anything out. That's going to give you some more room on this harness. When you lift it up, you get even more room to maneuver this around. Now for more room, I'm going to remove the injector harness. You have some O2 sensor wiring that's routed into these little extra holders, and you just want to move those out of the way. And it's pretty obvious where they go. They just sit right there. Now I'm going to take off the injector harness right at each injector. Now each injector is held on by these little clips right here, so you actually have to take this, and I just like to take a pick and just move it back. And you have to be careful, you don't want to lose these. So you just push them back a little bit so that spring retention, let's see if I can put this where you can see. You got to catch it. This can be a little tedious. I'm trying to hold the camera so you can see. Let's see, where can you see that? Right there. So if you come up underneath, you just have to catch that clip and move it out of the way. Of course, this one decided to come and lock back on. And you have to do this with all the injectors to release this harness. If you just try to pull this back, it's going to break. So there we go. So I have them both just push back, and that's going to release that. Now I have to do that for each one along this injector harness. It's going to be too difficult for me to show you each one, so this is basically the trick. It does take a little bit of finagling. Now you can use various different style picks. This was the 90. I switched to this one here, which seemed to work a lot better, getting the ones as I worked all the way back. Now usually I sit right on top of the engine as I work my way back, and then once all of these are loose, this injector harness actually lifts right up. Now I like to pull this back and then re-clip all those clips right away. You don't want to lose those. If you do, you could end up with a misfire because the injector isn't firing correctly. So if I lift this up carefully, here's some for clicking. Alright, here's one here, I don't want to lose that. Now you can actually just push these right back on, and it's ready to clip back in. You want to do that with all of these. Done. 1, 2. It's nice when they actually have fallen into place correctly. Now this one back here. Oh. I lost one. Thankfully I think I have an extra one downstairs. Or I have to find that one. Now that one there flipped over, and that's actually what you're trying not to do, is have any of them go flying on you. Now using a magnet I was able to recover that, and I just want to install that one, and you can see, you can look how the clips go. They face down, and you just start on one end, and there's a little retainer slot, and then just pop those on. Now when I install this, it's going to be nice and easy. I just push it into place, and when I push down they self-lock. So I also disconnected the oil pressure switch right by the oil filter housing, and that gave me a lot more room now. With this harness, I can maneuver this harness, and I could actually flip it right over the top, just like this. Now it gives me plenty of room to get to this valve cover. So I really think it's worth it to do that, to take that harness off. Now this is some steps that you would do if you had to remove the fuel rail. It's just held on by, you can see some 10s down in here, so they have some hold down locations, and you could actually pull the fuel rail out if you needed to replace an injector. So that would give you access there. Back here I have a crankcase vent line that attaches to the back of the valve cover. I have to be careful with that. A lot of times it's brittle, and I don't have that component. And then this way here, there's these O2 sensor lines which are just held on by this clip. So you just pull that clip out, And same thing on the bottom. It's just held on by a clip. Actually, you don't even have to touch that one, because down along here I have these E-Torxes all along the side of the valve cover that I need to take off. But my next step is going to be the Valvetronic motor itself. Thought we'd take a quick look at the new valve cover. If you do buy a valve cover complete, it does not come with the oil filler cap. So I'm glad I recommended that, because I have one to install, because a lot of times the seal starts to fail and you'll get a little bit of oil leakage from that cap. You can see right here, this is the hold down for the Valvetronic. You have 2 bolts here that you need to remove, and there's one here. You don't touch these, this stays on. So you just have a little E-Torx right here, and then that's going to slide out. These hold downs all come included with the new valve cover, and they're locked into place. It comes complete with a new gasket on the end for the sensor, and comes with all new gaskets. Remember, the center gasket's here. Now it does not come with sleeves. The sleeves should be replaced, and that's for here for the spark plug sleeves. And a lot of times when you take these off, these little nipples right here, which are the drain backs, I believe, for the crankcase, those will break off. So if you are just doing a reseal, you'd be replacing just these gaskets and this gasket, and sometimes you can super glue these back on if they do break off. Now on this Valvetronic motor, there's a little access screw right here, and it's a 4mm Allen. And if I turn one way, you can feel tension, and then if you go the other way, it actually releases the tension. So I'm going to release some of the tension on this by hand. This is actually turning the eccentric shaft, which controls the intake valves. And I'm just going to take some of the tension off. Now if I go this way, I can feel the tension. And I'm going to then back out the screw slowly here and here, and there's a little E-Torx down here as well. Now you're going to need an E8. I like to have a low profile, a small E8. And this is just 1/4 inch. And because if this end is too big, it's not going to fit in there. So I'm going to take that bottom one out first, right there. And it shouldn't really be that tight, so once it starts coming free, you can just usually spin it out by hand. Take your time so you don't drop it. Once you have that bottom E8 out, you have 2 on the side to loosen up. See, they don't have much tension. A lot of times once they're loose, you can actually put your ratchet away and kind of just walk it out. You hear that little bit of spring retention, so I just moved it a little bit so that it would retract. And then I'm just going to back these out a little bit at a time. Once I don't have any more tension, I can go ahead and take. Okay, so that's nice and loose now. I'll go ahead and take these out one at a time. I don't like to leave any hole open, like a spark plug out. You don't want to drop one of these down inside. So if you're doing plugs, I'm actually waiting until I have this portion done, and then I'm actually going to do plugs last. That way, if I drop something, it's not going into the cylinder. And you still got a chance to fish it out. There's the other one. And Valvetronic motor. It's actually going to just come right out. Now with everything loose, you can just wiggle that the Valvetronic motor out. Oops. So here's the motor itself. There's that access, and when you turn that with the 4mm, basically this right here turns. And that's how it does the adjustment, through that worm gear. Now before you jump ahead and start taking the valve cover off, you do have this hose which runs underneath the intake manifold, and this often can be brittle, so you do have to be very careful. I hope it doesn't break on me. I'm going to cut that zip tie, and then right here with a pick I have to carefully work out each side. There's like a press tab that you can try to press, which spreads this side and the other side, which is just held on by a plastic clip, and push this back a little bit without breaking it. It did take a bit to wiggle that free, and you can see it's held on by pressure on the two corners here and one over here, and it's supposed to be able to press these two tabs to spread it open, but most often it's just too stiff from age, and you just have to keep working it free and wiggle gently to prevent this from cracking. So once that is good, just move it down out of the way and keep an eye on it so you don't damage it when you go back in. Otherwise, you've just made some more work for yourself, potentially removing the intake manifold to do that piping for the crankcase vent valve. Now once all of this is done, this is more of the easy part now, is removing all of the E-Torxes from around the perimeter of the valve cover and the hold downs in the center of the valve cover. So then we can go ahead and lift this off. I'll start with the center hold downs. They're 10mm, so you have one here to loosen, one here, and another one back here. See, they're not very tight actually. They crack free pretty easily. Spin that off by hand. Okay, once you get these fully loose, you can actually give them a tug and they can come out. There was some oil in that well there. And then you have that other one here in the center. The two on the edges are the grounds. Okay. This is that center one. It's not a ground. Most of the time they stay in, so this one here doesn't want to come out. You want to just make sure it's loose. This one here was leaking, so that seal was compromised. Also keep in mind that that center bolt right here doesn't come with a replacement valve cover, so you do need that one. That is not the ground. The other one comes with it. The other two comes with it. Now I'm going to use a E10 on these right here. And basically you have to loosen all of these now around the peripheral of the valve cover. So if you have some electric tools and air tools, this can speed up the process. I am using a swivel socket, which makes things a little bit easier. And just loosen them all up. A lot of times once they're loose, you can then just spin them off relatively easily. Let's see right here. Just want to make sure it's free. You can pop these out if you want. They do lift out. They are retained, so you don't have to do that, especially if you're not replacing the valve cover complete. And if you do other repair work, it's good to hold on to those bolts in case you ever lose one. Just like I have a couple of injector harnesses that I dropped, and this makes it a little bit easier pulling these out because the threads can catch when you're trying to remove the entire valve cover. So at this point, you need to work your way around the entire valve cover and remove all of those E10 Torx bolts. One additional thing of note is that on this bracket that holds the Valvetronic motor, these two Torxes do not come on the other valve cover as well. So you need to save all three that go along with this bracket for the valve cover. And they do not have a sleeve. You can see right here, that's that one. This is what the other ones look like when they have a sleeve. And you can see they're actually a captured bolt. So you don't have to take the full sleeve out, but it does help so that it doesn't catch on the threads on the bottom. But make sure to save these three for that bracket. Once you have all the hold downs removed, you do need to work the pry tool underneath the valve cover to carefully separate it and pull it back. This is pretty snug just from age, and once it breaks free, usually it separates all at once. So if you have to struggle more than that, you might have missed a hold down. You do have to finagle this out now. You have to come up over the Valvetronic. Got to make sure that your gaskets aren't getting stuck when you lift this valve cover off. Now these sleeves here can hold you up. That's underneath the valve cover. So if you lift it up, and you can see those sleeves right there, you can actually grab them and pull them out. Because the difficulty is you have to clear the Valvetronic system. So I'm going to pop those out. Now with those sleeves off, you still can have a little bit of trouble removing this. It's all in the angle, and I've lifted up this gasket around the peripheral. So if I'm going to come up all the way, and I'm going to twist in slightly and up, that's like a little puzzle. You can see I'm actually stuck on the gasket, so I'm just going to pop that off like this so that the gasket stays, and I'm going to take that off after. And now the valve cover is removed. Just going to go ahead and remove this gasket. This is the gasket that you would replace if you were just doing the valve cover itself. This would fit onto the old valve cover, and then you would also have to replace the seal for the Valvetronic motor and the small circular seal on the valve cover for the eccentric shaft sensor, which the eccentric shaft sensor on this vehicle needs to be replaced as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do that next. Let's take a quick look at the valve train while we have this apart. These are the Vanos units here. These are the pickup wheels for the sensors. I've seen a couple of times when these Vanos units fail, these pickups are actually cocked to the side. These Vanos units sometimes do fail. This is the eccentric shaft sensor, where we have 3 bolts, and there's a little access hole right here in the timing chain module to replace that sensor to get to that bottom one. And then we have the exhaust camshaft, which is captured in this cover here, and then we have the intake cam along here, and then you have your eccentric shaft, which just runs along here. There's that gear right here where the VVT motor, Valvetronic motor, will adjust the intake valves. Now I've tucked a couple of rags in here, and you can see I went from the inside and tucked it in so that if I do accidentally drop that hold down for the eccentric shaft sensor, it's not going to fall into the timing chain area and into the pan, and that would be a really bad day. So you just want to use caution when removing that bottom hold down. I'm going to start with the bottom one and just crack it free. Take the gloves off because they tend to be more slippery with oil. And a slight tilt downward. Unscrew that. Now the top one you have to get out with a ratchet wrench or just a regular box wrench. Okay, I'm just going to tuck another rag in up top here for these two up top, just in case, and then I have a little magnet that can help. And just using a ratchet wrench, once these are broken free, now that they're loose and they stay partially threaded, I can go ahead and remove this and just slide that sensor out. And here's that eccentric shaft sensor right here, and the oil in the pins. And I'm going to replace this as a unit. It's a little bit of a pricey part. I think it's almost $400 just for that little sensor. Well, now I know why it costs so much. It comes with 3 bolts on it, and they're held on by these little rubber pieces right here, so they're actually partially threaded in. And even on the bottom one, you know, just use caution. If you back it up enough, back up the top, remove those so it's loose, you should be able to slide that out without having to fish that bolt out like I did. This would be a little bit of a safer way. I still would use the rags just in case you go too far. But what's nice now is that this is going to just drop right in. Now to help you install this, take this bottom one and screw it in to the sensor so that it's close to the bottom. And that's going to give you some extra space when you feed it down. Otherwise, it will get hung up on the timing chain module. See, even the top is getting a little stuck. So, you can bring them in just a little bit to finagle that down. There it goes. So that it sits on the camshaft correctly. Now I have to back out that bottom one and line it up. Now looking inside that cavity here, you can actually back it out so that it's flush, and now you can use that to line it up correctly against the cylinder head for the installation. And you can get it started. On the bottom. Make sure it catches. You can definitely feel that it caught. And then go ahead and spin that on. Not fully tighten. Gives you a little bit of wiggle room to go ahead and tighten these up top here. And the same thing, now you have to catch these and slowly tighten them in to the point where you could use the ratchet wrench to speed things up. So now at this point, I can use a ratchet wrench to snug these down. And speed it up a little bit. And you just want to snug these down. Snug down the 2 top ones. The bottom one is loosely fitted as well. So remember to tighten that bottom one up too. Snug these down. Make sure it feels good. Okay, snug it down, little quarter turn, and the eccentric shaft sensor is replaced. Just going to go ahead and remove all these rags, just for safety. I'd rather be a little extra cautious than not. And the next step is to clean the surface of the cylinder head. So the first step is really just to take a rag and carefully wipe it all down. And do the front surface here and all along the side, and just start by wiping all the residual oil off of this surface. And don't forget to wipe down the surface in the center as well as the sides. Now if you notice, when you're looking at this, there's a couple of spots that have a dowel. So you have to match that up, and it has to sit correctly with the valve cover. This would also be a good time to replace those spark plugs, because I have everything open. Now you want to wipe down the sealing surface and clean all the spots. Same thing, I'm just going to take a little piece of Scotch-Brite and just go over all of those little spots like that. And just go around all of the sealing surface and just make sure that this is nice and clean. And then when this is done, I'm going to take a rag with some brake clean and go over it to make sure that there's no oil residue, so I get a nice clean sealing surface. But now your next step is to take a small piece of Scotch-Brite and just work your way around the perimeter and in that center. You can see that oil residue, and a little piece of Scotch-Brite does a really good job in taking that residue and any gasket material off. You can see right there. Now that everything's clean after the Scotch-Brite, just a little bit of brake clean on a rag, and you just want to go over the surface and remove any residual oil from the sealing surface. And remember to do the centerpiece as well. So you're just going to quickly just use your finger like this and just run over each surface and remove any kind of excess oil around the entire peripheral. It's just too good to pass up doing the spark plugs now. Now depending on what style plugs you have, you may have just the normal 5/8 style like this, or you may have a style where you need a special socket with a multi-point to remove your spark plugs. I always like to tighten spark plugs to specification. On this particular vehicle it's 30 Newton meters. These are pretty tight. So you can see how convenient this is doing these spark plugs right here. Imagine with everything in place, you have a lot more in your way. Spark plugs are replaced around 100,000 miles. And let's take a look at one. I can pull the last 3 out on my own. Let's just pop a couple of these out. See what they look like. These have about 75,000 on it. It was just convenient to do it while we had everything apart. Cost effective. Yep, they still look to be in decent shape. They do have some wear. Now with that out, I like to always not leave anything open, so I'm going to go ahead and put my new spark plug in and just hand tighten that down. I do always like to torque spark plugs. Let's take a look at one more. Yep, about the same. I'm going to go ahead and remove the rest of these spark plugs. Okay, with your torque resistance set to 30 Newton meters, it's plus or minus 2. Just go ahead and torque them down. And as a general rule of thumb, you tighten them down and then a quarter turn. Now to reverse the process and start putting that valve cover on, Okay, time for a quick look over. The surface is clean. Spark plugs are installed. Sensor's good. I know I tightened all three. Make sure that that pipe in the back is out of the way so it doesn't get damaged. This is just oxygen sensor wiring, so that can get put out of the way. Take a look at the valve train, make sure everything looks normal. And time to sneak that valve cover on. Now you can see this white sludge stuff. That's not really sludge, it's actually a little bit of residue from the crankcase system. It's like an oil and water mix. So it was a good idea to do that crankcase system, which is integrated into the valve cover, especially due to this having about 75,000 miles on it. Now before I put the valve cover in, I have these sleeves. And I'm just going to use a little bit of this silicone lubricating compound. It's effective from -70 to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm just going to take a tiny bit of that and lubricate the bottom just a little bit and the top up here. And these sleeves are actually have like a spring retainer. Looks like it got crushed just a little bit, so that they squeeze together, and that actually pushes right in. You want to have that nice and solid in there, bottomed out, and that needs to be installed all the way across. So I'm going to do the same thing, a little bit of this lubricating compound. Now this doesn't really do the sealing, this is just the sleeves. The spark plugs. You can see there's a little bit movement up top, and I'm going to need that when I lock everything together. That's going to squeeze together, and that valve cover is going to lock into place. Now installing this valve cover is all in the angle. Now if you are going to be resealing your valve cover, you would be taking off these Torxes right here. This pops off this way, you put this seal on first. And then same thing here, this is another seal that taps into place and locks in, and you would pry it up from the corner to remove it. So from here, let me see if I can set this up so you can see the angle to install this valve cover. Now these are already installed. You can do it this way too. The big thing here is to make sure that the gasket doesn't roll underneath. So with the replacement gasket, you could use a little bit of RTV around every bolt. Just a little dab, a little dab, a little dab. When you install that gasket, let it sit for a couple of minutes so that it gets tacky, and it'll help hold that gasket in place. And just a little bit of RTV in the channel. And this is where the gasket would fit, and it actually is just pressure fit. So you could actually spray the entire valve cover down with some brake clean so that the sealing surface here again was free of oil. You could even clean out if you have any of this oil and water mix, and then little dabs of RTV and stick that gasket into place. And don't forget to replace the ones in the center, and take a look at these nubs and make sure that they're installed correctly and they didn't fall off. Alright, let's see if I can get that angle I need. So, going to go over the top of the Valvetronic so that falls into the well, and then rotate my valve cover so that it falls into place. Just like that. Now before you tighten anything, take a look. Here's your seal for that eccentric shaft sensor that we replaced. You got to make sure that it fits nice right there. And your sleeves, make sure that the sleeves are fully seated, and remember you have those dowels, so you got to make sure you're on the dowels. You can check each sleeve and make sure that it's fully seated and everything slid in. Actually, it looks pretty good. It fell on very, very nicely. Now remember, you have those two E-Torxes for the hole down. So I would start by just getting those started. Yep, I feel the threads got caught already. And the other one. And your center. Just want to make sure that threads are going to catch good. Yeah, that feels good. Other center one. Yep, that feels good. Now I also have that center one for the Valvetronic, which is the 10 mil. And remember, that's that regular 10 mil. Right there. Make sure that catches. Now once again, before I tighten anything down, I'm going to go around the entire peripheral of the valve cover and just make sure everything catches well. And because that gives you a little bit of maneuvering, you want to give it a little bit of a wiggle, make sure it's seated all the way on the dowels. Now if you jump ahead, don't forget that crankcase vent hose in the far back, or else there'll be a big vacuum leak. So if it's not running well, you may have rolled the gasket or you left that hose off in the back. With an inspection mirror, you could also go around the entire peripheral. You can see it real well on this particular vehicle, and you can feel in the back real well. So it looks like my gasket stayed in place the entire time I put that valve cover on. So now I'm just going to start and make sure that all of these catch well. You would never want to just zip these down with air until they're caught. That would be how you would cross thread something. So just catch them. If you are going to use air or electric tools, make sure that everything's caught. And you know, it's just take that a little bit extra time and just make sure that everything's good. And just pre-tighten everything just a little bit. I got to work my way around the entire valve cover. Now the torque spec for these is 6 Newton meters. That's the center. I'm going to start by torquing down the center one. Right there, 6 Newton meters. Do this back one. And even those E-Torxes are also 6 Newton meters. So it's not much. I think you remember in the beginning that when I loosened these up, they loosened up very, very easily. It's the gasket that does all the work. Okay, and now 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going to work my way 2, and then 1 and 1, and then 1 and 1, and then I'm going to finish off the sides. It's not much. 6 Newton meters. Doesn't feel like a whole heck of a lot. If you have a marker, you could actually put a little Sharpie mark on each one that you do. Just remember, you have to do this one here and all the center ones before you put the Valvetronic on. You want to forget that one, you'll end up with an oil leak under there. So now continue around and torque them all down to 6 Newton meters. Now that everything is torqued down, I still have to put that oil filler cap on. Now this gasket doesn't come on the valve cover. This is just a little extra little gasket that just rests on here like this. So that doesn't do the sealing. The sealing is actually done from the oil cap itself with this integral seal. I wanted to show you how to put that on, but as soon as I rested it there, it actually snapped right on for me. Now, if you are replacing the valve cover and you're reusing this, you do have to carefully pry this out. It's held on by like 4 little tabs on the valve cover. So as soon as you set it there and give it a tiny little push, it's already locked into place and done. Now remember, this can rotate, so wherever you want your BMW logo to show up, facing that way or facing the other way. Actually, it does have a lock on it, so you're limited to the position. So now it's harness time. I'm just going to actually lift this over and make sure this is out of the way. Harness time. I should plug this in before I forget it too, that crankcase vent line in the far back. So right here, it just rests on the back and gently push it in until you hear it click. And good to go. And I didn't crack that, that's a good thing. And then these clips, this just goes this way. That harness for the O2 sensor comes up above this. And I can rest my injector harness. Don't have to clip it yet. And you can see that this has a channel where that's going to sit. And here's my other harness here. So it's just positioning things where I'm going to want them to go. In a couple of minutes, there's my clean eccentric shaft sensor plug. Don't want to forget this too, so I can just start there with my oil pressure switch and just do a quick check. Tight, tight, tight. I did the entire peripheral, so I'm good to reverse the order here. Start putting things back together. Now remember, I said this injector harness is nice and easy once you're going back together and you have your clips all installed. I just have it sitting back on the injectors themselves. I just have to push them down and work my way back and actually hear them lock into place. I think the back one's already locked. Yep. You give them a little bit of a pull, make sure that they're fully locked. And so now for that Valvetronic motor, I forgot about. It's just going to rest right here. You have to line up that bottom piece, and you can use that Torx to make sure that you've locked it in. Now I'm turning this, and as I turn this, it actually pulled it in so that it lines up under here, and now I can put that bottom bolt, that E-Torx in. If you don't have that, this bottom E-Torx won't line up correctly, and now it's good and solid in there. Now I put a little bit of that butyl tape, if you've seen my video for doing any window regulator repairs on a E46. That butyl tape's sticky and it helps hold that in place for when I put that bolt in. Now it's right on the bottom, and I just rested the socket. There is actually a little divot right there which helps you locate that and just get it started. Make sure you don't cross thread this. And then once it's started, you can pretty much go ahead and then tighten it up on the bottom, or at least snug it, and then also start these up top here too. Alright, I went ahead and started those up top. I just want to gently lock this bottom one in first, because that's the hardest one. Should go in relatively easily, just you don't have much space, so it's a little, that's the only difficulty. Looks like it's going in a lot better than it came out. And these two are already started, so I don't have to worry about locating them. There we go. Gentle snug. Make sure I'm on there good. You don't kind of lose the teeth, and you only get the very end, so just be careful when you snug that down. And then these aren't bad at all. These are pretty easy. Right, zip them in by hand first, and just gently snug these down. It's just a pressure fit. And then you'll be good to go with the Valvetronic. We can reverse and put that harness back on. Okay, position that harness back. Just use that to hold it up and out of my way. And same thing, it should really just fall right into place. Nice. Okay, back to my grounds. Do that first, make sure I don't leave anything loose. Those 8 mils. Okay, I went ahead and tightened those 2 grounds down without being distracted. And then I can just slide these connectors on and pop my coils on. Really, it's coming along, and we're starting to reach the home stretch. And do the back 3. Always do a little double check. Good. All my coils are good. My grounds are good. And my harness is good. And that's routed good. And all set there. And I didn't leave anything unplugged. Alright. So actually now would be a good time to put that vanity cover on with all this back off. And make sure that you plug in the Valvetronic motor. Really will make things easier. Wow, just drop this right down. Oh. Put my 5mm Allen screws in. And I really like doing this on the E83. It really gives you a lot of room. On a E90 and a 5 Series, it's actually a bit harder. Just because of the space constraints. Yeah, that's good. Snug those down. Again, snug, stop. These don't have to be super tight. Well, let me get that back one. Sure you put that hose on in the back like I did and also almost forgot. It would have been a good scenario. Vehicle would definitely not run right, just keep in mind. Now I'm going to install the microfilter housing. Just as a little side note, if you're wondering what these little flaps are, this is a water drain. That goes right here. That back in underneath. It does take a little bit of finagling to get that in there. Okay. Just check under here. There we go. And you have those Torxes. This seal goes above this, here and here. And that was a T30. I don't want to go. You have to maneuver it a little bit so that all those hold downs line up. There we go. Okay, I got that one. And there's 4. These you just need to zip down real quick. One more on the far side. Okay. There we go. Okay. Just rest in place. Put the little twisties, lock it down. Okay. Hook up the battery terminals that we disconnected. There's that jumper. And then you have that little one that fits through here. And you have the main. This way, there we go. So tighten these down. 10 mil back here. Slide that down. And the 19. Just this one here. Be careful not to let that drop and ground anywhere because this would have voltage on it. So you could arc something out. Now that engine brace, move this group up at the top. And that was these larger 13s, 13 millimeter. Get them started on both sides. If you have all the right tools, this is something you can do. It is more involved than the older N54 valve cover. So it might be something that after watching this you decide to not do yourself, because there are a lot more steps involved in replacing a valve cover on an N51 or an N52 or an N52K once you add the Valvetronic. If you got the tools and the time, it's definitely something that you can do. Take your time, don't rush. If you do have an E83 like this is the easier motor to do this on. Unlike like I was saying, the E90 and the 5 Series is a little bit less room, especially to maneuver that valve cover out. Basically, you're going to be doing the same thing. Get that sweet spot to just get it to pass over the top of the eccentric shaft and intermediate levers on the intake side. Little plastic rivets. There we go. These are a little bit older, so they don't want to retract well, so I'm just going to compress it a little bit here. Hopefully that will help it slide in there. There we go. Tap those. There we go. Running out of things to install, this is a good thing. If you remember, that was the coarse thread. You have these four. And this piece here goes underneath like that. And this was the fine thread on these. Started by hand. Now when you're done, you want to cycle the key on without starting. Let's just turn the key to the on position without spinning. And that one bolt doesn't want to go in. And then cycle it off and then cycle it back on again before starting. That's going to let the Valvetronic system do a relearn. If you just start it, you could cause a problem where it might not run right until you cycle the key off, wait, and cycle it on, and do like I recommended for that. So I have to pop this little snorkel piece on here. So at this point we want to do key on, wait about 10 seconds, key off, wait about 10 seconds. I like to do this twice. Key on again. Key off, and it's going to check calibration of the throttle, also run a calibration run for the Valvetronic system. Now I should be able to go ahead and start it. And all all set. No check engine light, no warnings. It is a cold start, so the idle's up a little high, which is not abnormal for this engine. Plus the AC's on. It's already coming down a little bit. And tomorrow I'm going to take it for a drive, make sure everything's good. Thanks for watching. I hope this helps someone out there that may be trying to do this repair themselves. Something that you can tackle. I would recommend watching the video from beginning to end and making sure you have all the tools needed before you start.